Okay, so Moshe and I are both faculty from Portland State University in Portland, Oregon. Moshe will tell you what department he works in. I am retired, as many of you know, but not really retired. I'm still doing the stuff I love to do, which is to write as well as support and cheer faculty on in writing, and do some mentoring with clients. So Moshe, and my background is education. I'm an educational psychologist. And so tends to be my approach. Okay, so Moshe, you introduce yourself?
Yes, hi, my name is Moshe Rahmut. Again, I apologize for the delay. I teach at Portland State University, where I'm an assistant professor, and I teach Hebrew, modern Hebrew, and I teach general studies. And this is where I tie into textbooks, because I'm writing a textbook about, so it's for a course that we teach at Portland State University. It's a 15-credit course, goes through the whole freshman year, where we introduce the students writing, science, social sciences, and the humanities. So pretty ambitious.
And so would you mind putting in the chat, why did you come to this session? What is your goal in terms of book writing or book proposal writing? If you could put that in the chat, it would help us a lot, and I will get the PowerPoint up to on the screen. And we can see the reason we ask you about why you came to this session is because in learning, the best predictor of student learning is background knowledge. And if you already have knowledge of this process, that's helpful to us. If you don't have any knowledge about writing a proposal, that's also helpful. But the most important thing as a teacher, at least is to understand where your clients or your students or your audience is. Developing a book proposal, learn more about, haven't done that. I wrote a successful, now I may be crafting for a revised edition. Okay, good. Some of you have already written book proposals. Some of you have proposals out. So some of you have interacted with publishers. Some of you haven't at all. So there's a wide range of people in the audience as I just scan the chat. Thank you very much for participating, and these ideas that we are good. So keep them coming if you're still working on that. We can check them in a minute. Okay, so I'm going to share my screen, and it's not at the beginning of the slideshow. So let's play from start. Okay. So we're going to focus today on crafting a persuasive book proposal, because not all book proposals are alike, and some are successful and some aren't. But how do they become successful? And we hope we can give you some hints and ideas on how to do that. And you already put in the chat why you came to this session. So Moshe, do you want to talk a little bit about the context of this session?
Sure, thanks, Dana.
Mm-hmm.
The way I worked on the proposal is that I worked with Danielle. We met 8 times weekly for 60 to 90 minutes every time. We were meeting at the patio, at Danielle's patio, because we're neighbors, and it was all during COVID, so we were sitting outside. Sometimes it was nicer, sometimes it was colder, but it was always great fun. And Cricket helped the cat, so we had a third group member, and then we both made journal entries as we were doing this, which helped us a lot in creating the presentation now, going back to what was the process. In my specific case, and every case is different, my specific case, I already had the book written and was looking to make it into a proposal, which ended up also changing the book, as I think is natural. And that's that.
Okay, so for our first meeting, I'm going to, Moshe had some notes in his journal. So what was memorable about that first meeting, Moshe?
So first thing was that I would talk about the book as a project. So my terminology for it was project, and Danielle said, stop talking about this as a project. It's a book. And I had it, although I had like 200 pages written, I was having a hard time believing that this is something that's in the process of becoming a book. So this was the first, something that helped my confidence. Like, no, this is really a book. This is really happening. That was important to me. And also another thing that Danielle said, stop writing the book for the next 8 weeks, write the proposal. And this also helps because it helped me zoom out instead of being at the same time within the, you know, how every paragraph and every sentence matters when you write. But it's different than looking at the whole book from above. So I was kind of, I needed to leave the book for a couple of months and work on the proposal.
And so then the first homework I had, and this process, and that's the one thing we really want you to take away from this and keep in your mind, is that it's a process of kind of shuttling back and forth between the external expectations in writing a book and then your own book in the process of writing the proposal, you. So there's a world out there that's going to receive this book. So one of the first things I had Moshe do was to identify some publishers that might be interested in this kind of a book that he was writing. So Moshe, tell us about that process.
So I would like also to mention that the sentence that you said there is, and this is your second point here, publishers need authors. So again, I was like somebody who's outside the party and hoping that they will let me get in. But when you think about it, publishers have nothing to publish without authors. So that's an interesting thought to say, oh yeah, maybe publishers they seem powerful, but they also need me. And then I did the obvious thing, which is to look at the books that I'm reading, the textbooks that I'm using to teach, and starting from there to see what are similar titles, who publishes them, in what way are they better, in what way are they worse, and then going into the publisher websites and see what do they want what are their submission guidelines, and also see, because they need me and not only I need them, see which ones you like, which publishers are using the terminology that catches you and which don't. For example, I found that for me, publishers that were very commercial in their language were difficult for me, while those who were more speaking about community, I was reading their sites and saying, yeah, I want to publish here. That's my hope.
Okay. So we actually made a grid. I happen to like comparative grids. And so we made a grid of the books and then a chart across if anybody wants a copy of that matrix. It's very, very helpful. And I ultimately always included in my book proposals a grid that shows what are the other comparable, not necessarily competitor, comparable books is the language that Moshe likes. And that these are books that would end up in the same kind of a category, that have the same feel for them. Because Moshe's book is a series of stories, and the goal is to teach students about ethics through this series of stories. And I'm going to let him talk more about what's in his book, but he also, we have a little, a short section here where he's going to talk about cooking, and as a different segue, a different metaphor to talk about this process. So Pound cakes.
Pound cakes.
Yeah.
So, instead of talking about this book, which may be too technical, I thought I would take the idea of pound cake. So let's say that your course that you usually teach is a course about baking pound cakes, and you're already using textbooks that are good enough to teach. But your experience after teaching the same course 3, 4, 5, 7 times is that there are some things that you keep adding to make students more successful in baking pound cake. So, for example, if all the existing books do not add lemon zest, and you figure out that whenever you teach your students that to add not only flour, sugar, salt, eggs, butter, yeast, but also add lemon zest to the base of every pound cake, it becomes better. And you keep teaching the same thing. And yeah, I see questions about the grid. We'll come back to it. And then so the main 3 things are to think about yourself, the author, about the audience, which are students for now, and the existing books. What is it that you keep adding to the existing books in your classroom? That is the thing that's the center of your textbook. That's the reason you're writing the textbook. The thing that you always keep adding. It could be content, or it could be your approach to teaching the content, but whatever it is, this is the thing. So when we think about audiences, there's a complicated group of 3. So the audience is the publishers, because this is the audience of the book proposal. But the publishers have to imagine an audience of professors who are going to adopt this course, this book. And then the professors have imagined students that are going to succeed with this book. So you have to keep thinking about students are the ultimate audience, but then there's an audience of professors who need to pick the book from the shelf, and then there are publishers who need to pick the book for publishing it. So it's kind of this real audience and then 2 upper layers of audience. And then in our case, comparable titles would be books on making pound cakes. And the author information would be experienced baking teacher for undergraduate students. So the crucial thing that you see here at the lower one is, what does my experience from being in the classroom as a professor teaches me about what students need and what it is that students need and the comparable books don't have. And in that example, all the books talk about flour, yeast, sugar, and salt, but nobody talks about lemon zest. That's the heart of the thing. That's why I'm writing the book. And once I know that, once I know the students and the comparable text and what I'm adding, everything else will fall. The other ingredients of a book proposals are going to be easy. In this case, so what are they? Everybody expects some form of conceptual background. So once I know that I add the lemon zest, so I tell the story. Here's the audience, the students who want to bake. Here are the existing titles. And my experience teaches me that there isn't enough lemon zest in pound cake so far. So that's my book. Then description of the book. Also, once you know what you want to add, the description becomes easy. In this case, this book talks about baking pound cakes with lemon zest. And then the title is difficult because you have to keep, even once you know what you want to say, there's a lot of thought about the title, and I hope you've seen the talk about titles, which was here in the conference. So anyway, you come up with a few and choose and test them on people. I just chose one, Getting the Gist of Zest, but not necessarily a good one. And then chapters should also be quite easy at this point, because they're based on what your class plans are, and your class plans are your chapters in the book.
All right. So one of the things we did in our meetings is this kind of zooming, I'd say, in and out in writing the proposal. We zoomed out to the publishers. Who were the publishers? What are the books on his shelf? What are the books that are in his reference list? I mean, the authors, the publishers. Who are the publishers that are doing this kind of work? That's really, really important. And then you go back into the book itself. So what is the purpose of this book? All authors need to really, really know and be very, very clear, just like any writing you do in academia. What is the purpose of this book? Why am I teaching this book? So we did an exercise that I've done before, and that's is where you write the purpose of my book is to, and then you write it over and over and over again. And Moshe, you did that like 14 times or something, 14.
Right, yes.
14 different ways of doing that. And what was that like for you?
So first, it was a pleasure and fun. And I think that's something to remember. And also, I think it's a recurring subject in the conference. If you've seen the journaling today, the idea of finding the pleasure in this. So writing the book proposal, I think when I started was about, oh, here I am doing this marketing thing, which I don't feel good. I don't feel that I'm good at this and I don't enjoy it. But then it became a game of searching for what it is that I was doing anyway. And when you just you give yourself a few minutes and you just start writing. The purpose of my book is to, and you never erase, you just keep writing and writing and writing. And then at the end, you choose which ones you liked. And one of the ones I chose was the purpose of my book is to awaken the student. And then I knew, right, that's the point. That's what I do all the time. I tell them that all of the things that I teach are based off what is their ethical approach, and they need to be awake and ask themselves, what do I believe in? And then everything else, economics and climate change and all of the other things just flow from there. So it was fun, and it helps find the real core of what it is that you're writing about.
So in the third meeting, we started going deeper into the different parts of a book proposal, and we dealt with audience, we dealt with purpose, we weren't finished dealing with audience. We dealt with competing text, which is what it's called often by publishers' guidelines. Moshe prefers comparable text to not make it this sort of a corporate kind of I'm fighting for something, but other people are doing this. How does my work fit into theirs? And as we approached we had 8 meetings. These meetings, I've kept thinking about it more as a cyclical process of moving in and out from the proposal to his own writing and to the parts of the proposal. And we used he used a variety of approaches to these different sections of a book proposal. And it was iterative. You might do the purpose of the book, and then we might revisit that in a few weeks just to say, is that really the essence of what you're writing? And it's, so do you have anything more you want to say about that, Moshe?
Just enjoy going through the circle again and again. Like you have those stations, audience, who is my audience again? What's the book doing? What are the other books doing already? And what I have to add? And they keep changing each other. When you find out about new books, for example, only yesterday in this conference, I heard about new comparable titles that I didn't know about. Sins of Science and How to Be Perfect. So once I go over them, I need to tweak again. So it keeps, and there's a joy in that. After sometimes it feels it's a joy in going back and back and see how each part influences the other.
So, and how do we find, and then if we look at these other audiences, in who are the audience, the publishers, the instructors, and the students, the question is, how do we find out about what these different audiences want and need? Publishers want things, publishers want to sell books, bottom line, okay? So, I mean, they want good ideas out there. They want students to learn, but basic bottom line is they want to sell books. And you might want your book also to be sold. You want as many people as possible to read your book. So it's a balancing act between, you can self-publish and then you don't have to worry about some of these things. But I think that working with these different audiences, just like working with reviewers when you have a paper that you've written, helps strengthen your book, helps strengthen what is going on and who you are and what you believe in. So we started talking about audiences, and then, I'm sorry, I have two screens here and I don't trust forwarding. We started talking about how do we approach finding out how students as an audience feel and how they feel about ethics. How do we do that? So Moshe and I did what? Go ahead, Moshe.
Well, okay.
This is the students. How do you find about students as an audience for your book?
So my first approach was that I know my students. Who knows them better than I? But we talked about it, and maybe there is a point, and there's a lot of to learn from actually doing an experiment where I asked my student at the beginning of the year, what would you do in this scenario? And then I ask the same question in the middle of the year, and then I ask the same question at the end of the year, and I see how hopefully their opinions change and what they learned from the book. So so we're still working on it. We've done the experiment. So we've done it 3 times. We had to go through all the university hoops, of course, of making a fair research. And actually, Danielle and I are going to look at the results within the next couple of weeks and hopefully present them somewhere. Yeah.
And as the students, and hopefully the goal is the students have actually, their ethical reasoning over the year has changed. And the impact of using that textbook has helped them do that. And so we're assessing how they responded to the textbook, but also how their ethical reasoning might have changed during the time. Because Moshe believes it has, so we will now try to get some evidence on that. And that can help him, I think, make him feel more, well, he can tell you how it helps him, how it will help him. But I anticipate that all of that builds confidence. Because when you write a book proposal, for me anyway, and I have 5 books out, I want to go forward with that proposal with a lot of confidence. I know how to do this. I've taught these students. I have experience. Your publisher is going to look at your CV and say, have you done anything? What are you doing? Where have you presented this? Do you know this subject? And they will look at your CV to see if you are conversant with others on this topic and that you've taught this for a while. They want to know your depth of experience with the topic. And the other thing that Moshe did in terms of getting audience is that he presented at a conference about the book. And that was another way for him to receive information from an audience. Do you want to say more about that, Moshe?
No, I'm actually, I want to get closer to answering people's answers that are questions that are already
In
on
the chat?
Yeah.
Okay, okay, go ahead.
So do you have the 7?
I have the 7 parts.
Yeah. So the question about the grid, I want to say what we did is we had these 7 basic, here are the 7 basic things that a proposal needs to do. Okay, according to what Danielle told me and what field research showed. So you need a title, you need description, contextual background, chapter outlines, audience, author, and comparable titles. So after you write this, or maybe again, it's an iteration, it's a cycle. As you do that, you go to the publishers, you find a few publishers. And what we did is we created this grid where we look at the submission guidelines.
Sorry.
So when you look at the submission guidelines, they may use different terminology, but most of the things they're going to ask are within these 7 things that are here. So we kind of mapped each publisher's guidelines into this. So how do they call? You know, one person calls it contextual background, somebody just calls it context, somebody just calls it something else. Comparable titles, some people use that, some people use the word competition, some people use the word, I don't know, other words, and so on. But it all comes back to similar things. So we did agree, all the publishers, what are their guidelines? And so we created this one central book proposal, and then you tweak it. Jennifer asked about tweaking. Then you tweak it for any publisher that you want. So you start reordering it the way they expect it to be, to show, of course, that you listen to them and to what they want and to use their language. But it's all quite easy after you have your basic proposal with these 7 parts. There's another 8 parts that yeah, we also looked at, we had on the grid the acquisition editor. So who do we have to connect in each one? And then we followed what's happening on that grid.
You can.
And wait, one more thing that you taught me to say, to put there is why. That's also important. Why do I want to publish with this person, with this publisher? That's also very helpful.
So let's see, I haven't been checking the chat. I've been trying to manage the PowerPoint. So I'm just going to say this. The proposal flows from what you know and your own understanding of the text. Building the proposal itself builds confidence. So taking the time to write a really good proposal helps you. It's not as simple. And process. That's why I say it's crafting a proposal. And what Moshe has said, I know what I'm adding is beyond the textbooks that are available now. So your book adds something that is not out there, and the publishers need to know that. So that's where we ended up. And I guess, Moshe, I'm going to stop the screen share and open it up to questions, or open it up to chat. And Moshe, you want to handle that?
Sure. Sure.
Stop share. Come on. I don't know why I'm having so much trouble. There. Okay.
Yeah. So again, going back to Jennifer's question, definitely you do not want to just send them the proposal, your generic proposal, without tweaking it. They have to see that you read their website well, because how you read them is a sign for them for how you read everything else that you read. How would they count on you to read the books that you mentioned in your book if you didn't even read their website? I think that's the logic, and it makes sense.
And I will share the grid example. And the other thing I do when I go to when I used to go to conferences before COVID, and I had an idea about a book, I would go around to different publishers and say, are you interested in a book on rubrics, which is one of my books? It's right behind me. And or a book on action research. I had a book proposal on action research, and that was before action research was a big thing. And some of them were like, I don't know. Well, what are you talking about? So you kind of, years before you actually publish the book, you have sort of gone around to those different book booths and looked at their books and talked to people. And the person that you want to talk to is the acquisitions editor. That is the person who acquires books, and that person will be the person you'll have a relationship with. And like Moshe just said, have 2 chapters ready. What are that can kill your chances with the publisher? Go ahead. Moshe found a
so one thing I would say that so first mistake is to give them the generic proposal. There's plenty of mistakes. I don't know that I would think about mistakes. I would think about what's positive, because that's going to help you. There's hundreds of publishers, so you make mistakes with one and you correct it. But I would prepare 2 chapters before you're done, 2 chapters that are really, really good, already edited and fully ready to go. Because I had a publisher that's read the proposal and said, can I have a chapter? And I already had one that a professional editor worked on, and I could say, yeah, here you are. And then they said, great, I love this, but can I have another chapter? And then that was more difficult for me. So you want to keep the momentum by keep sending them stuff. So you want to send the proposal when you already have at least a couple of things to keep them interested, already ready. What happened to me was, by the way, that the person who was my professional editor, to whom I was sending the chapters, and I was saying, here's a chapter I need it for this book that I'm writing, and I was paying them as an editor. After a couple of chapters, they said, I don't want to get money for this anymore because this book is really interesting for me, and keep sending me chapters. And I kept sending him chapters, and after a few more chapters, he said, fine, I want to publish this book. So that was very lucky for me. But
it's a different book. It's
yeah.
So I see there's some textbook authors here. I wonder if they want to pipe in and add anything else that we've missed in terms of the book proposal submission process. I see Ken Campbell and anybody else? I know I called you out, Ken. I went to.
Hi, Danielle. Yeah, no, I think you guys, really were very thorough. I'm trying to think if there's anything that I would really add. I should go back and look at some of my book proposals, but yeah, I think that mostly you just want to make a case for what's different about your book, and as Moshe mentioned, when you're comparing your book to other books, the idea isn't to criticize or trash, the other books and say they're no good. I don't think that would actually be looked on very favorably. I think the point is just to say that these books might be good, but I have something else to offer that's unique and distinct, and here's what it is. Whether it's it's going to be shorter, it's going to be longer, it's going to have a different focus. I mean, it could be any number of different ways that you distinguish, but that's kind of what you're looking for, is a niche and a unique angle that that your book is going to fulfill that no book out there on the market currently does. So that's, I think, what I would add. But yeah, great job, you guys.
Thank you, Ken. Anyone else?
I could talk a little bit about my first experience.
Okay.
So I was writing an English or college writing skills textbook, and I did a really thorough job, and I had really learned how to format reports in other technical writing situations. So it just looked really professional and fulfilled everything that they required and more, with some thorough comparative tables of different aspects that I thought would be helpful. And the editor who responded said it was the best proposal she'd ever read. They had a summer hurricane in New Jersey and lost power, and she finished reading it by flashlight. It was a 200-page proposal with my sample chapters, and offered me, begged me to send them to consider them first. And that, according to Steve Gillen, was a big mistake. I should have chopped it around and not taken her up on it, but it felt like my foot in the door. But it was just such a powerful affirmation of how important presentation can be in impressing an audience like a commercial publisher.
Yes. And meeting an acquisitions editor, someone asked about that, is you're building a relationship. And you might have several publishers. What happened to me is my first book, the Rubrics book, was wanted by Stylus, and it was also wanted by Corwin for K-12 context. And my publisher, and then I talked to someone on campus, and the person said, you can go with a big publisher like Corwin, or you can go with a little publisher like Stylus. And that was more higher ed. And then he said, he does a book publishing program on PSU. And he said, if you go with a small one and you're a new author, they will stay with you over the years and help you develop as an author. If you go with Corwin and it doesn't do well, you don't know, you're not much happens. I don't know if that's true or not, but I went with a small publisher. And also because my author was higher ed, not K-12. And I published my subsequent books with Stylus, and they've supported me as an author. So I don't know, what do other people have in terms of your relationships? That acquisitions editor is really important. I did put the competitor book chart in the chat. It's for a book that I'm working on right now on reflective practice, and it just shows the kind of the stuff that I think about. Sometimes I put the table of contents of the chapters just to kind of say, how do people arrange their thinking on this? And then I also put comments at the end. This is an old one. This one has good ideas on this. This has good way of setting up the exercises. It's kind of culling the field and really knowing where my book is unique and fits in. It's just, I don't know if it's perfect or not, but it's just the way I do make a competitor chart. And then I always include it in my proposal because it helps me kind of see where things are. So.
Yeah, I wanted to also talk about, there's a question here about other things you can do to increase your success with contacting an acquisition editor. I want to say that I was surprised when I was looking for acquisition editors to see how much they put on themselves on the web. So when you look into the publishers, many times these editors will either put a video of themselves and talk about themselves and say what they published before and what they're looking for and what they like. And so you can, about quite a few of them, you can learn about them before you contact them, and you see if you like what they have published so far. And I remember a couple of them, I was like, yes, you want my book because we have the same ideology, we have the same approach to why people write books. And there were some of them that I said, no, even if I win this, I don't think we're on the same page. So you can today know about your acquisition editor, because they put stuff about themselves personally, and in the same publisher, you can choose the one that seems to you like you would connect with the best. Yeah.
Any other thoughts? Kevin, you've written textbooks.
Yeah, I haven't really done a lot of proposals. I sort of was asked to work on some small projects and it worked out well. And then I kind of got brought in on other projects working with somebody. And then I built up relationships with the acquisition editors and I'd say, hey, how about a book like this? And I would sort of verbally do what you're doing in the book proposal. So I'm not a good person for the actual formal book proposal, but our current writing team is thinking about a new book that our publisher is not likely to be interested in. And so we may go shopping it around. So that's, well, I have to be here because I'm running this session, but I would have come to this anyway, because I mean, that's something that I'm not really used to. And I always want to get at least one thing out of these sessions, you know, for myself out of these sessions. And I already got that way beat. So I got a bunch of good tips.
Well, you know,
So
one of the
thank you.
things that's really good about, I always say to people, you've got to read like a writer instead of read like a reader. So you're going to read textbooks and other books as a writer. And as a writer, you're looking at structure. For me, that's what I do. I look, how did this person do this? And I can remember that. I'll give you an example. Stephen Brookfield wrote a book on teaching for faculty. And one chapter, he had to do benefits of teaching, of critical thinking, teaching critical thinking. And each section was a header, was a sentence. Critical teaching, discussion. It was about discussion. Discussion helps students understand diverse voices. Discussion helps students benefit from reflective practice, all sorts of things. And I thought, that's a great idea. Because you have a list of benefits. You don't have to necessarily relate them to each other and have the flow. So I used that in the rubrics book, which I wrote and or co-wrote with Antonia Levy. And you know, that I grabbed that idea from a book. So that's why you review those books. You go after things that you like, that make sense to you as a teacher and as a writer, and you borrow them, you use them. And I've used that in other books too. And it's really a simple way to get the benefits out. And it's a sentence as a header, and then all of the description down below. So, yes. That I don't, oh, good, Ken. That's a good book. Yeah, Francine Prose on how to read like a writer.
Yes, right. Yeah, it's a good book.
Yeah, thank you. Good source. Anyone else? I have one on eloquence too, on writing with eloquence, which is very interesting in terms of how to make lines in your writing that people, it quotes Jesus, the Beatles, I mean, the Bible and the Beatles, and politicians as examples in the book on eloquence. So those are nice things to have as writers. Anyway, how could you explain which approach? Which approach, Cheval?
Just talking about, you said something about, you were just explaining what
Read
you
like a writer?
author. No, but you said that other author just had each separated point and you didn't have to connect points. I was trying to follow that idea. You just said it. You're like me.
I didn't understand your question.
Okay. So you were explaining some other author, you know.
Oh, Stephen Brookfield.
Okay.
Stephen Brookfield wrote a book on critical discussion as a way of teaching.
Okay.
And his second chapter had the benefits of discussion. And there'd be a benefit like students increase their understanding of diversity. Students know how to take the perspective of others. A whole series of sentences about the benefits of discussion. And so I thought, now that's a very good idea. If you want to talk about benefits, you can just use a header that is a sentence for that section on benefits. And I've used that.
Okay.
The header, instead of a 1-word header, 2-word header, a sentence as a header, and then the section that describes it. Does that help?
Yes, thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, we've reached the end of our scheduled time.